Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Salam, hello, peace to you all. Welcome to the program, another edition of Iran versus the Epstein Empire. This is episode 14, and it is Empire of Death versus Axis of Dignity in our wonderful collaboration with Resistance is Fertile podcast. And we have with us today both of our co-hosts from Resistance is Fertile podcast, Indi and Benji. It's great to have you both here. And we have a, back by popular demand, a very, kind of special guest, Sina Rahmani from East as a podcast, producer extraordinaire, ranter in chief. Welcome, Sina. It's good to have you on. Oh, you're muted.
You're muted.
Oh, that's uncharacteristic. That somebody. Oh, he's trying to do.
Yeah, he's only got the sound effects on.
Yeah, the
sound effects.
But we can't hear Sina.
We still can't hear you, Sina.
I think he must have changed his microphone, so he's going to, do the technical things.
You'll have to speak only with your soundboard for today.
Yeah,
he has to speak only through sound effects.
I know what I did. Right. I muted it like a noob. I was turning up the volume and I muted it. Here, we're gonna do something.
That's gonna fill everybody with great confidence in your producing capabilities. But he silenced himself, indeed. Well, while people are filtering in for this exciting edition, please do like the stream. We're on 3 different YouTube channels streaming simultaneously. Adnan Hussein Show at Indications, the official home of Resistance is Fertile on YouTube. And of course, East is a podcast. And we're also on we're on Substack, Resistance is Fertile, podcast.substack.com. And you can kind of like it there as well. And we're on X, on several X accounts. So if you're watching on X, the easiest thing in the world is just to retweet it. And you can even quote tweet and say, this is what I'm watching right now. Join me. Don't be stingy with a good thing. This is a good thing. Share, be generous with your comrades, friends, families. So, do post and subscribe to the channels that you're watching on. Subscribe to all 3. That would be really helpful. Usually I have a fundraising announcement, but I have an even better announcement today, which is that the Spocks for Gaza 3rd round fundraiser has reached its goal. So students in Gaza are going to be able to take my course, Professor David Yagubian's course on social biology. Yes, let's hear it for you, because you were a big part, all of you who donated and who promoted this. It's really heartening that we're going to be able to offer these courses over the summer to students in Gaza. So I wanted to thank you all and say that from the very beginning. Of course, we'll come up with other fundraisers, soon enough, but let's just take time to be, happy and grateful and to congratulate one another on trying to do a good thing for people in solidarity with Palestinians. And this is a very, this is an educational channel, as is Resistance is Fertile, and East is a podcast, kind of providing kind of insight, kind of the, upper level or graduate seminars in like the history and politics and culture of the Middle East and of anti-imperialism. So, that's really fits in line with our mission and goal to be able to offer more education for those who need it. Okay, so without further ado, there's always so much happening. It's almost hard to know where to start. Benji reminded me that today is the anniversary, is an important anti-colonial anniversary. So maybe it's worth saying something about the heroic struggles of the people of Vietnam who defeated U.S. empire decades ago, but it still is an important lesson, both politically but also militarily, that I know resistance groups around the world who have been combating U.S. empire and fighting colonialism and for their own liberations have learned so much from the example of the people of Vietnam. So does anybody, have any other remarks to commemorate and mark this day in anti-colonial, anti-imperial history?
Well, I can share some personal recollections, because it so happens that my uncle, so the husband of my father's sister, was a Vietnamese, and he was a nationalist, and he was a communist. And so I used to go to their flat fairly often, and the place was absolutely plastered with Vietnamese posters. I remember one in particular which said Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, victory, all in red and very flashy. So I was raised in this ambience. This isn't what made me an anti-imperialist. That was the first 9/11 in 1973, when there was the coup in Chile, and my uncle helpfully informed me that this was the CIA, which made me a lifelong anti-imperialist. And, everybody was, of course, making fun of the commies, of the tankies, as they were not known as at the time, for making stuff up. But lo and behold, 30 years later, it was indeed the CIA. And this coup in Chile is what started the neoliberal rollback all over the world. And so I do remember I was going to speak about Vietnam, right? I do remember the victory. I remember the scenes of those helicopters flying out, from the US embassy. And I just saw today, which I hadn't been made aware of, that the Americans actually stole lots of Vietnamese children on their way out, and a helicopter full of those children actually crashed in the sea and killed everybody on board. And it's particularly shocking or revealing to have learned this today, because you might recall at the beginning of the special military operation in Ukraine that most provoked of all unprovoked conflicts, there were these accusations that the Russians had kidnapped Ukrainian children. And so it's really, every rock you look under, every accusation is actually a confession on the part of this empire of death. And the episode today is called Empire of Death versus Axis of Dignity. And the axis of dignity runs through history and through time, and especially through Vietnam, which with Korea was one of the places where warfare acquired a new dimension, being the underground dimension, being the tunnels. And that dimension has been used, of course, as we know, to great effect in Gaza by the armed popular defense, the popular guerrilla and the popular army in Gaza, and also at an even larger scale and with the cooperation, at least inspiration and sharing of knowledge from North Korea by our brothers and sisters in Iran and their incredible underground missile cities, underground fast Navy boat cities, and now, as we all know, underground meme cities from which precision narrative guided ammunition comes out in the form of Lego videos and other artifacts of Western culture. You said earlier, Sina, Adnan, that you had no fundraiser for today. So if I may contribute one of our fundraisers, this is one that Brother Ibrahim actually asked me to promote in our podcast on Monday, the RIF Live podcast, which you can always come and join every Monday, 9:30 a.m. ET. And this is a family that we just started fundraising for. Fatima is a mother of 3 children in Gaza, and she has absolutely nothing. So I already hold 5 fundraisers, but this is not one of the one I hold, but it's one of the ones that Ibrahim, whose heart is so vast that is always finding people who have absolutely nothing and who need support. And so that's a fundraiser that Ibrahim is inviting us to promote and you to support. We're at $807 so far, which we raised to our podcast, and it would be absolutely amazing if we could get, I don't know, maybe another $500 or maybe double it by the end of tonight. That would be amazing, because as we always say, being an anti-imperialist, especially in the West, isn't just talking the anti-imperialist talk. That's fine and dandy and a good thing to do, but it's also walking the anti-imperialist walk, which is a material thing. And the most material thing we can do is help people who resist simply by existing on the land. By refusing to stop existing on the land is the most material form of resistance. And it's one form of resistance that we in the West can legally support. And we can do that through those fundraisers, those verified fundraisers that we know go straight to the people who resist. And as Comrade Mao said, the gorilla needs to be like in the people like a fish in the water, and the best way to nourish the gorilla is by nourishing the water, being the people. So hopefully that will have inspired some of you to contribute. And I always say even $1 does it, because it nourishes their soul to see that you took the trouble to give even $1. And please make sure you don't give money to Chuffed, because they have this kind of sly little thing where if you don't pay attention, they will make you donate to Chuffed, and you would be much better advised to increase your donation if you're prepared to let Chuffed take it out of.
Yeah, I'm very happy that we've been able to raise, actually, not just, to me, it's significant amounts. We've been able to raise hundreds of dollars for people in Gaza, but also just to show that they're not forgotten, because Israel is attacking these people because they are important. There's a reason that they're attacking and trying to kill them, and we need to support them because they are important. They really are the heart of resistance. But while we're talking about Vietnam, I'll just read a few quotes from Ho Chi Minh, who I think everybody should read. He's, again, like I read the Quran for news, you can read Ho Chi Minh from the 60s, 50s, and I think he died shortly afterwards. But you can read him, and it sounds like he's talking about current affairs. He says, this is from 1968, the American imperialists had mistakenly expected that the savage destructive power of their bombs and shells would weaken the North, meaning Free Vietnam. He said, after nearly 100 years under the yoke of colonial servitude and more than 20 years of resistance against imperialist aggressive wars, our people more than any other people hold peace, which is so badly needed for natural construction deep in their hearts. But this must be genuine peace in independence and freedom. And he said, because of their individualism, talking about the Americans, they flinch from hardships and difficulties and sink into corruption, deprivation, waste, and luxury. They crave for fame and profits, position and power. And then that's still happening. And then this is kind of his, like, he used to end his speeches saying all the time, the U.S. imperialist aggressors are doomed to defeat. The Vietnamese people are sure to total victory. And then this is when one of his last speeches before he died, he said, the war of resistance against U.S. aggression may drag on. Our people may have to face new sacrifices of life and property. Whatever happens, we must keep firm to our resolve to fight the U.S. aggressor till total victory. Our mountains will always be, our rivers will always be, our people will always be. The American invaders defeated, we will rebuild our land 10 times more beautiful. And I think the Vietnamese example is very important because you can see they were fighting for hundreds of years. So I think some people maybe lose patience after seeing one bit of bad news or one bad week. And you have to understand that these are generational struggles, as painful as it is. Palestine has been fighting since Al-Qassam. It's not the Al-Qassam brigades, since the man Al-Qassam in, I think, the 1920s. And British imperialism before that. This is a long struggle, but the Vietnamese people never lost hope through very desperate circumstances. And as long as the resistance doesn't lose hope, why should we, who are not doing anything, lose hope?
Excellent point, and it just reminded me because Benji was talking about the helicopters leaving the roof of the U.S. Embassy in Saigon at the end of the war and the victory of the Vietnamese people. And we just recently passed an anniversary ourselves on April 24th, 1980. Right. So very recent, just a few days ago, was the anniversary of the failed Operation Eagle Claw, where a number of U.S. helicopters with, special forces were involved in an attempt to, undermine the Islamic Republic of Iran that was just being established in the course of the revolution. And there was the period where U.S. Let's just be honest. U.S. spies. I mean, the embassy is now the museum for the den of U.S. espionage. It's called the, Jasuskhane. And these helicopters were, brought down, and again, there were always these stories about how it was all these mechanical failures, but we can say there are different ways to narrate this story, but it just reminded me of that. And
Is
also
this Tabas? This is called Tabas, right? Or
yeah, the location where it happened.
yeah, because I heard yes, because I've heard Iranians referring to that, and like I, being American educated, actually had never heard of it. I know more about they made that movie that Ben Affleck movie where they go and like rescue some Canadians. It's amazing how they actually just overwrite history with like movies and make all these losses into victories somehow.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh,
They tell us actually, I mean, all the time that colonialism, that was a long time ago. You guys can't keep remembering and bringing that up. I mean, this is just like unhealthy. It's in the past. I mean, that's not not relevant to us now. But if you actually, I was thinking about that when I was, in Italy, for example, on the Adriatic coast, in this small city on the coast called Manfredonia. There was a plaque in the harbor about, one time in the 18th century, it was either the 17th or the 18th century, that an Ottoman frigate came into the port, and there was an exchange of fire, and the Ottoman frigate then departed, and they had to have this massive plaque commemorating this resistance against the evil Ottoman Empire from the 18th, 17th or 18th century, some kind of minor skirmish, but they really wanted to affiliate themselves with this history, remember it. It's a plaque in a prominent position in the harbor, has, this pride of place, and is clearly part of the identity of the town, of the small city. And I thought, they tell us that we should forget that they slaughtered 2 million people in Vietnam, or that they killed 1.5 million or up to 2 million people in Iraq, or, that there were tens of millions in engineered famines in India in the late 19th century, or even in Iran, where there was a famine because it was the British who cut off the Strait of Hormuz from food that would be brought in during its occupation in the, at the end of World War I. Okay, so we're supposed to forget all of these grievances because they're just far in the past. But for them, they memorialize even the most trivial of encounters with, the evil Turk. And, it's so important to their history. So I think it's very important that we're talking about these moments and remembering them, because these are important victories. And so,
Yeah, and it's not just them. Like within India, if you ask people about colonialism, some people in the north will talk about the Mughals. Like even in the history here, you kind of skip over the colonialism part and then go back to like fighting the other guy who was also colonized. So we have to like clear that from our heads as well.
its own whole really important kind of topic that we don't have time to get into, but is about the way in which Muslim presence in different parts of the world is uniformly characterized as some kind of form of invasion or colonialism. And even, of course, we know how this is being deployed by Zionist historiography to claim indigeneity for settlers who came in the late 19th, early 20th century and stole the land under the aegis of British imperial mandate and colonialism over the area, but claim and portray the coming of the Arabs and the Muslims as colonialism, right? As if it displaced and appropriated and dispossessed the people of the region, as if there was like some large, massive influx of people who came and displaced the indigenous people, which is nothing like what it was in a pre-modern kind of period when you have maybe a few tens of thousands of people who are now kind of in charge of a vast sort of territory and themselves have to adapt to the conditions of the people that they happen to be ruling. And it takes hundreds of years for them to actually become Arabized in some parts of the Middle East and not in others. And it takes hundreds of years before, something close to a majority actually converts to Islam, right? So they've got this picture of it as if it's something like the violence and the dispossession that happened during the periods of European colonialism, and use that, right? So that is the same in the historiography in India, is to kind of characterize, these Turkic Muslim ruling dynasts as a period of colonialism that's in fact actually even worse than the British colonialism that actually conveys status, right? Like it's like that we were colonized by the British, so we have the status because now we know about Western culture and civilization and speak good English. Like it's in a way its own way of developing a certain kind of sick prestige in the colonial and post-colonial era.
Yeah, that's my whole class, man. Be careful. Yeah, that's my whole people. But I mean, Iran is changing that, right? Because Iran is showing a Muslim narrative which is on their own terms and which is not manufactured by the West. Like Saudi, UAE, they're I mean, like ISIS, Al Qaeda, those are sort of like manufactured. Like in world wrestling, they have a heel. It's like a manufactured sort of Muslim identity, which I mean, those colonized people play along with as well. But like now Iran is showing like, no, this is like what actual Muslim behavior is. This is what actual sort of like Islamic rules of war are. And people are seeing like, oh, it's not at all like the world wrestling entertainment that I saw. But I was watching Syed Marandi on Dialogue Works, and he said something interesting where he was like, if the US attacks again, everything's kaput, like all the energy. And he said like, he was hinting at it, but what I read between the lines is that he's saying that like Saudi, UAE, those guys like won't exist. And so there might be like a redrawing of the Sykes-Picot map if they keep pushing the needle further.
Yeah, well, that contrast with the GCC would be interesting because there's been some recent sort of news, right? The UAE condemning, Iran. There's an effort at the UN to condemn Iran's control over the strait. But wasn't there a spokesperson on some program recently who, said that, well, Iran is just so jealous of us because we're so wealthy and so developed and we have such a modern society, and they're not as wealthy and elevated. What it reminded me of is the 9/11. Why do they hate us? Oh, they're jealous of our freedoms. They hate us for our freedoms.
But now why do they hate us? Because our shopping malls. I think Iran has bigger malls than them, but like that's the sort of measure. It's like, do you have like malls and like Gucci bags and influencers?
Yeah, no, who's going to outdo the Iranian consumer class for the Gucci name brands? I mean, Sina could tell us about that. Sina, we've got to bring you in here, especially when we're talking about the GCC.
Right. And Gucci.
Yeah.
The Gucci tea.
Oh, that's all. I mean, in terms of what you said, Indi, yeah, no, there is, I've said this before. There's a funny irony to all of this, which is, you know, Netanyahu flexing and saying, "Oh, we're redrawing the map of the Middle East." And it's like, yeah, you are, but not the way you wanted it. Because, like, what the map is now missing 14 major American bases. That, like, the removal, like, the sort of, you know, the essentially radiation therapy that Iran and the Axis have been conducting on the American presence in the region. It tells you that this entity, like this Zionist entity, that its power is very real. I don't minimize its ability to inflict damage. However, the guarantor of that power, right, the larger security blanket, shield, whatever you want to call it, you know, that dome of privacy or whatever that, like, puts them out of reach of their own crimes, so to speak, of, like, their own neighborhood, because that's in effect what it does. I mean, this is an entity at war with all of its neighbors, and there's no viable way to, like, be a country and do that if you don't have, like, an immense amount of backup working behind you to ensure that, you know, and an immense concert of vassals working under you to, like, feed you, to, you know. So right now Jordanians, you know, like, all, like, are feeding, you know, Zionists. Like, that's it. Like, that's Egyptian, same thing. Like, the breadbasket of Egypt is feeding that entity while Gazans starve, while people in Gaza starve. So this is the vassalization of the Arab neighbors. On the one hand, is what we've become accustomed to, and that they're the feeling, and especially I had this feeling in the June War. You'll remember, Adnan. That this feeling of, like, this inevitability of this kind of rock rolling over everyone, and that rock being sort of settler colonialism and its sort of European character, like, led by the Jewish state, so-called, but really backed by this vast imperial apparatus behind it, guaranteed and supplying it and whatever, underwriting it, whatever metaphor you want to use. But the fact that Iran has extracted that underwriter from this regional equation, this is a new Middle East. We are at a new Middle East. This is it. Like, it's not, and then we haven't even gotten to the topic of Hormuz. Like, Hormuz is that choke point, and the sort of, let's say, the erection of a new choke point in the world, and arguably the world's most devastating choke point. It didn't actually take, it was like and what's funny is that, like, these things that happen that are so historic, like, it was one phone call from, was it Tang Siri, the martyr general? There was, like, one phone call, and he was like, okay, close it. Done. Like, it's like, I was thinking of it the other day when I saw, like, a shop close, like, the guy just, like, turned off the open sign. I was like, oh, that's what Iran did. That's all they had to do, because when you have, you know, like, fire control over this coastline and the will of a people and a population that is backing you in pursuance of a foreign policy that is, to put it lightly, confrontational with the greatest powers on the planet, minus the allies, the greatest Western powers, that is to say, that, like, this is not an easy thing to achieve. However, Iranians achieved it, and they didn't have to fire. Well, they did end up firing some shots. Those tankers in the early days that tried to make a run, and also some of those stories were also because of, I don't know, there's a lot of, like, tit for tat stuff that happened. Interestingly enough, to bring it forward to our current moment, tonight there was a very small unmanned, like, a small drone attack on Iran. Very small, like, a, you know, basically a quadcopter, from what I can tell. Someone said surveillance drone, because all the news that was going around was like, oh, air defense is activated in Iran, and something interesting happened, which I hadn't ever seen before, which we can pull up on I guess I can pull it up on I can pull it up on the Telegram channel, because it's Iran immediately responded by bombing with Shahed drones offices of the Kurdistan Democratic Party of Iran, the KDPI, in Iraqi Kurdistan. They immediately bombed it. So, to my mind, what that says is, and it's an equation that the Iranians have sort of laid out, is that there's a, you know, it's like the tweet that Trump said, you know, even Trump's like, pathetic thing of like no more Mr. Nice Guy. That's in fact like the Iranian position now, which is the position, the strategic patience, the doctrine of strategic patience is over. You now have a new generation in charge, the next generation, let's say, in charge of the IRGC. I mean, it's hard to say that because it's also like it's a decentralized kind of defense, and it's not like something you could pinpoint on one person and say, oh, it's different now. But however, partly as a result of the imperialist actions and the sort of relentless pursuit of these senior IRGC guys, that's effectively a kind of graduation ceremony for the guys underneath them and a kind of retirement plan for the guys above them, in effect. That because of this, you now have an aggressive Iranian foreign policy that, to put it lightly, is muscular. And this is interesting. I mean, we've been seeing this playing out all along, but the reciprocity, the kind of doctrine of reciprocity, which is Iranians are basically saying, okay, we're not going to be like Saddam and take on Americans only directly, right? Wait for Americans to bring all of their forces, array them around our country, and then wait for them to launch a war and then fight back. I mean, you could say that Iran did that at the beginning, but one thing Iran didn't do, which was just localize it to the American localize it to the specific war machine of the U.S. Because what they did essentially was attack those bases that were all around the zone and also all of the nodes of interests. So then if something got hit on the Iranian end, say a bank, they would go and find banks on the other side. Exactly. No more Mr. Nice Guy. The most fucking boomer ass meme you've ever seen in your whole life. The guy used to be like the king of posting. Now he's like the most played out. No one cares. Nothing.
Yeah, I don't even pay attention to this stuff anymore. It's just
he doesn't even have that anymore. He can't even say he's like the greatest poster of all time, which
he used to be the greatest. He used to be the
greatest. He used to be like just like complete unmatched dominance. Now he got it. Oh, there was an assassination attempt. No one even cared. Like no one even. It was memory hold in 6 hours. Like it wasn't even meme worthy. The assassination attempt. Yeah, like it's. So to my mind, we have a strange situation where for the Americans to say, because they're used to fighting like toe to toe only, right? That their interests and the wider web around them that supports their fight goes relatively unscathed. Iranians are chasing CIA dudes from their bases to hotels around the Gulf. Okay, think of what that means. They can't even go and have their burgers in their hotel rooms because
they're targeting the room in which they are. Just that one room.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like, these are countries full of brown people who hate these white imperialists, who are more than happy to spy for Iran. Like, it's not Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, UAE. There's a lot of Shia in these countries who are easygoing, who are not at all interested in like dying for the Khalifa fucking regime. Come on. So all of this is.
Yeah, I think actually, I've sort of suggested that like every cleaner in these hotels is probably informing on like these horrible, people. Like there's an army of disenfranchised people who identify with somebody fighting the power. So there's been like talk, has Russia been helping them targeting with their intelligence and all that? I don't think so. I think they've got their fingers into an army.
That's Iran's backyard. That's literally Iran's backyard.
There's a lot of Iranians there. So like Dubai, UAE, there's a huge Iranian population. And as the Americans say, the natives are restless.
Yeah, no, I did want to conclude with one thing. I am ranting, but somebody asked me early in this about this thing, which is the carpet. This is, I do have to say, this. My mom made this when she was pregnant with me. She was bored out of her mind pregnant with me. So she made one of these, and then they were forced to move one day, and they were like, okay, you got to move this. And then so she's like, okay. So she just like finished it and carried it with her. I took it with me to college, lost it, and then found it in the house I used to live in. I left a box there accidentally. This was there. So that's the story.
Beautiful story. I think, so the episode is called Empire of Death versus Axis of Dignity. another example of that is the fact that the empire is weather forming to cause drought in Iran and Iraq, right? Since Iran has actually destroyed all those radars, rain has come back to Iraq, rain has come back to Iran. And this is another way. I mean, this is like a vindication of the analysis of Ali Kadri, isn't it? In which empire is now producing, extracting value out of literally genociding people in all sorts of ways and destroying nature, but destroying nature as a way also to reduce the population. And there's a theory that's kind of popular, and it might be the strategy if they're still capable of any strategy beyond the 3 minutes attention span of not just Donald Trump, but derivatives traders, is to basically cause a massive shock to the world economy, which will result in many people dying. But there is something going on, I think, is very important, and it goes a little bit with that meme of no more Mr. Nice Guy, and it's got to do with the empire losing its grip on narrative. If we go back to Vietnam, one of the most enduring popular images of Vietnam was from that disgusting film Deer Hunter, in which there is this scene of an American POW being forced to play Russian roulette by a nasty, inhuman, depraved Vietnamese commie. I just learned today it's actually the script was about some Vegas gangster thing, and they just used it from, and put Vietnam story on it. There is absolutely no evidence that treatment was ever meted to any American POW in Vietnam. But that is the enduring image, right? The cruelty of the Asian cruelty against these Orientalist tropes. And today, say what you want for social media, and there's so much to be said for platforms about platforms like Twitter, but they've actually lost the narrative. And you see this in the Lego videos, because I think what it is, I did a tweet about this, is the West has theorized that wars were mostly won on the narrative battlefield. And now you have those young guys, very smart. They're actually all Farsi speaking. They don't even speak English, but like the Lego video guys, they understand imperial culture and white supremacy in a way that, only a few cultural theorists do in the West, and they know exactly where to push. And they are coming on this chosen battlefield of empire, the narrative battlefield, and basically eating the empire's lunch, right? And I think it comes from the fact that the imperial psychology is based, it's all projection, it's all accusation. Once you understand that what they project onto others is themselves, and they want to universalize it, which justifies that they will, treat people in the most horrible ways, because they're not quite as horrible as the ways they could imagine they would be treated. And there's this idea behind Western psychology, it goes back to Freud, that it's all about killing your father and having non-consensual sex with your mother, right? So it's all about homicidal violence and non-consensual sex. And Freud literally thought this was the universal basis of human psyche. And then his nephew, Edward Bernays, came and said, oh, okay, well, let's use violence and sex to sell stuff in the capitalist world. And it worked really well in those settler colonies where, there is no culture, there is no social nature, there is no connection to the land, no connection to your community. There is just a bunch of rejects from their own godforsaken Western European lands of scarcity, who come to a place, half crazed by the voyage and half crazed by their crazy made up religious sectarian beliefs. And so if you put this idea that, go kill everybody on the land and rape their ladies, which Columbus did the minute he stepped foot on in North America, then that is the psyche you're actually building for that settler colonial project, which never had borders. It's not just in, in the Zionist colony. The US doesn't really have border. It's always, has been pushing the border all the time. But they get it wrong. It is not the case that, human psyche is based on sex and murder. That is just, depraved Western imperialist psyche. I think human psyche is much more based on common humanity, on recognizing yourself in the other, although we recognize our differences in dignity, in self-determination, in making sense of existence through whatever spiritual narrative floats your boat or works or emerges in your society. This is a much deeper bedrock of the human psyche than, sex and murder. And this is why the Lego videos are actually eating the lunch of this kind of propaganda, because the West kind of propaganda is, well, now Yemen is about to find out why the US doesn't have healthcare, right? Or the other one is this picture of Tehran by the Zionists, and it just says Tehran before, invites you to imagine Tehran after, which, is Gaza or Hiroshima or worse. And you see those TikTok videos also of the Zionist terror gangs in Gaza, dressing up in women's clothes. And it's all about sexual violation and homicidal violence. But the Lego guys are not at all about that. They're about dignity. They're about reciprocity. They're about even their humor. If you look at it, is not nasty humor. There's something compassionate in their humor.
It's very halal. It's halal entertainment. It's like a halal confection. Yeah.
And because that's what it is. And it speaks to a deeper part in even those of us, who have been raised in white supremacy, who have been even raised as, what do we call yourself, guys? The next guys who might have a chance to ascend to whiteness.
I could have been the next Kash Patel, man.
If you only stay on the straight and narrow, Kash Patel is the only guy that the shooter didn't want to kill because he was the proper.
The shooter didn't actually fire any shots, man. Like they shot each other, and I think maybe a dryer got loose in the ball.
The shooter.
Can you even call him a shooter? Like, don't you have to shoot to be a shooter? Somebody carrying a gun. I mean.
Yeah, so that's just so American.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so telling that no one. It disappeared. Like the moment the story popped up, the same and I was thinking about this too. The fact that I've worked overtime to purge my feed, and I follow a lot of people, and I work hard to mute anything American, just stamp it out before I don't have to hear about Democrats this or Republicans that. I don't care. I don't live.
Bro, but this next election is going to change everything. Just pay attention to the next by-election in Michigan.
Exactly. I don't have to do any of that. And then even then I noticed that the muted nature of anything to do with America online, and it's just okay, who cares? I will say this about the Lego videos too. There's an important thing which I don't know if there's been any you look into this, but there's one thing Iranians managed to figure out with the Lego videos, and Lego itself does this, is sort of bypassing racialization, because everyone's just the Lego color in that movie. Mm-hmm. So you can get over it's like they almost found a way to bypass 5 or 1,000 years of Islamophobic racism and be look, we're humans too. You're a Lego person. I'm a Lego person. We can translate that. And on top of that, it's very halal. It's easy to make. It's replicable. It's the perfect antidote to this kind of new revanchiste, like Pete Hegseth. Like Pete Hegseth, and like I remember a few months ago was lecturing generals, and this guy is like a nobody. This guy has accomplished nothing, elevated to his rank from some political thing. He like took flack once in Iraq, and he made it his whole fucking personality. And
Well,
he's now
apparently he
elevated.
drank his old frat under the table, didn't he?
Well, I mean, I imagine there's a lot of U.S. generals in higher places that are like this too, who have like martinis for lunch.
Have you seen his bench press though? That's like the qualification.
Yeah, but like that's the thing. Like, there's a desperation in all of this chudness that says like, no, dude, we're cool. Like it's like the uncle from Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon Dynamite. Yeah. Yeah, Napoleon Bonaparte, Napoleon Dynamite. It's like that kind of desperate, pathetic, like, oh, we still have it. Like, oh, it's 90 again, and we're kicking Saddam's ass. Oh, we can do the highway of death in Iran this time. But everything they tried to do failed. And one thing like caused like another sort of calamity, and they had to move on. The very fact like that they're wrestling, that the disastrous attack on Esfahan, sequel to Operation Eagle Claw, and the fact that they tried to sell that as like, oh, we got our pilot out. Like there are consequences to this in the U.S. military itself. Like there must be generals or whatever commanders, like there must be dudes who are like, this is a stupid waste of money and people. What are we doing? We are losing the basis of our power. But I guess at the end of the day, if you're a U.S. general, your job is to provide profits to like Raytheons and like retire with like 6 boats on Cape Cod. Like your job is not to like be a successful military commander. Your job is to like just procure enough so that you can get some of the graft or whatever. So it makes sense that we're here. It's just the reality is that Americans lost their hegemony. Like this is just straight up, they lost. I mean, like don't believe, if you don't believe me, like watch John Mearsheimer. Mearsheimer, one of the few honest liberal intellectuals left. Okay, like one dude holding up, he's like the meme of like the nacho holding in the lock or whatever. Like that's all it is. It's all just John Mearsheimer being the only person being like, are we crazy? Like, have we lost all sense in all of this? And because he today was like this on one of these shows that he does on a daily basis, it seems. Like this is a calamity. We've lost it. This is the biggest disaster of all time, foreign policy calamity of all time for the United States. Like I think it's
on
now,
Daniel Davis, it was.
Yeah, that was today. It's interesting that another thing I was thinking about today is that like they're always I watch a lot of Iranian state TV. There's always there's always like English or Persian translated and subtitled and dubbed. They go through the work of dubbing all these clips. So like clips with like Tucker talking to Jeffrey Sachs, they had that. Lots of things with Mearsheimer. And I was thinking, and I was like, there's no opposite of that over here. Like they have Iranians on TV every now and then, but they're like cartoonish, mouth frothing, like monarchist freaks that Zionists push at you. But there's no like sense of, oh, this is the Iranian sphere and this is what they say. And it spoke to me about where we are in the reality of all this, is that one side shows their reality and shows like what the other side is saying about this war, or at least part of what that one side is saying. And then the other side just does Pete Hegseth, pig head sex stuff and flexes, and Trump throws a tantrum and they post memes, and it's just so played out. I never thought in my lifetime I would see such a deflated US. And here I am in the middle of May. There's another, or almost May 1st. Tomorrow's May Day. There is something else I want to say. Sorry, we're in full-blown ADHD mode. This also happened today. Many moons ago. This was April 30th, the Reichstag, the raising of the flag over the Reichstag. It's sort of tied to May 2nd, I think, in the sort of the calendar of things, but the actual flag raising took place today. So another day, another important milestone in the history of anti-imperialism. And yeah, fuck you libs who are listening to this, man. That is an important moment for anti-imperialism, defeating Nazi fascism. And I did have one thing to raise.
86% of all Nazis were killed by the Red Army, in case you were wondering.
I mean, I do wonder. I would have said one more thing I want to ask you guys, which was, we are at this strange we are at this strange inflection point where the US and its allies and its vassals, they are coming undone. I'm curious though, is that where do we see the other global South countries learning from this? Because Iran proved that you can not just confront the US empire, but you can actually push them back using relatively straightforward means. So I'm curious now if there is going to be yes, exactly. Kala brought it up. Every country has a Strait of Hormuz. Every country has a place where they can choke the flows of capital and goods and energy and all kinds of things. So I'm curious, are we actually is Iran undoing neoliberal global sort of capitalist hellscape?
I think we are.
I think they are. But there was a very useful tweet also by Sayyid Mohammed Marandi when he was posting about the high oil prices and the fact that, Brent crude has, despite all the attempts at manipulating, suppressing, managing, the market, it has definitely, started to go up. And we are now at the stage where a lot of what had passed through the Strait of Hormuz a few weeks ago has reached its destinations, and now it's not being replenished in quite the same way. The release of strategic reserves happened, but how much more can you keep doing that? So now finally it's starting to appear even in the current price. Even if the futures are high, they had managed to make the current price look low, right? And so in his commentary on that, I'm just trying to find actually that tweet, because
I'll find it, Adnan. I'll find it.
He pointed out that this is a perfect time for workers in Nigeria or in Venezuela or, in other parts of the oil producing economies to get incredible concessions right now from their employers. And one, it would be in solidarity in putting, here it is actually. So let me show it. So, he says, if Venezuelan, Libyan, or Nigerian oil workers go on strike now and halt production for a couple of weeks, imagine the enormous concessions they could get from Trump and Western oil companies. The Trump regime would fall on its knees. So there's a dialectical possibility here is not only can you benefit yourself by using the leverage, by piggybacking on the leverage that's been created by Iran's brave and courageous resistant stand, but it also can be solidaristic. It helps you, but it also is solidaristic in helping Iran in this moment of defeating the US empire and really unraveling it on a more global scale. So I said, this is exactly the kind of strategic thinking populace and workers should be employing right now against imperialist capitalism. Solidarity is effective. If it's used right now, this is an amazing opportunity and moment. And it's kind of what I said at the very first day of the war. I said, hey, this is a great time for China to, maybe reunify, in Taiwan. It's a great time to, break the blockade of Cuba, because the U.S. is tied in what will be a morass, a defeat in West Asia. So other world global regions really need to be thinking strategically about, what the possibilities for leverage is right at this moment and how to use that properly. So I hope other places recognize that they have, in this global economy that's so networked, there are, nodes in every place that can be, leveraged in the supply chains, in the production, resources, etc. In this kind of networked globalization. And in fact, this is exactly how it's supposed to, right? The whole theory really should have been that by extending capitalism and its tentacles throughout the entire world through imperialism and globalization, that in fact it was creating the conditions by which resistance to dismantle that system and replace it with another was actually being enabled. This is in fact actually how it should work. And so we just need, some kind of consciousness, organization, a bit of courage, and actually we could see this really kind of unravel very quickly.
I really do hope that, but I'll be honest, like in Sri Lanka yet, I don't see anything like that. So it's May Day in Sri Lanka already, and we have a nominally communist government. So there's red and hammer and sickle and stuff everywhere. But the economic program is still run by the IMF. So we still have to stick to IMF, whatever. And yesterday, the foreign minister met with the Israeli ambassador, which pisses off everybody in that party and most people in the country. But the fact is that after they kicked the Palestinians out, after October 7th, Palestinian workers, the people that filled the gap were Sri Lankan workers and Indian workers and people like that. And we have thousands of our own, effectively, hostages in there. And we're still sort of on that imperial teat. Like, we're still, I can't speak for other countries. I was speaking to David from Nigeria, and it's almost like the same mentality as well. You have to understand that Iran took Iran could have closed the Strait of Hormuz at any point. They've been hurt and humiliated for decades. Their people have taken real losses. Their children have gone without medicine, but they kept that thing open. And they only did it when their back was absolutely against the wall. They only did it when when Khomeini was assassinated and their children were killed in front of them, and that's when they did it. And so I want it to happen, but then to expect Sri Lanka, people won't give up a little momentary comfort for, you have to be like on the ground to stand up, it feels like. But I do think things are changing in some sense, in that we're like reorienting, as in we're just getting oil from India, which is just sipping it from Russia now. We'll take it from Iran. We really don't care, and we're fine. And we're getting like all solar and electric vehicles and everything we're getting from China. So there's a quote from Ho Chi Minh. We were talking about propaganda, which is kind of relevant. He was kind of talking about the sort of pillars of imperialism. He said, the US imperialists supply their henchmen with armaments to massacre the Indo-Chinese people. They dump their goods in Indochina to prevent the development of local small industries. They disseminate a depraved culture to poison the youth in areas under their temporary control. So we're talking about the Lego videos, right? The American culture can no longer reach the youth anywhere. So my daughter started reading the news, we started sending her some news stuff, but we can't send her anything from a US president. As in, the sitting US president cannot be shown to a 10-year-old, which when I was growing up was not the case. I could read the paper and not, my parents, without exposing me to like all sorts of crap, until Bill Clinton, of course. But like, you can't do that anymore. But the Lego videos I do show my children, because they are halal, and they are correct, and they like make sense. So the culture has shifted. And again, what kind of like stresses me out, honestly, about the Iranians is they're doing this sometimes in their second or third or like fourth language. And this is like not even their relevant area of study sometimes. Like, and I'm just like, oh man, like what have I done with my life? Like, because they're like
a nation of obnoxious overachievers, people are realizing. I come from a family of Iranian overachievers. I am a massive underachiever. I like everybody in my family can master a thing in like 3 weeks. You give my mom like a new task, she like, that was the first carpet she ever wove. Look at the job she did. Okay, that's Iranian.
Yeah, so any Asian mother would be like, that's your life, Puta. Like, you need to finish the carpet. Like, what are you doing? But this is, I mean, look, for a long while, education did seem like, I'm not like highly educated, and it seemed like kind of bullshit because of the way the people in the West are doing it. But now I'm like, oh man, I should have gone to school. Like, but so that pillar, the cultural pillar, they've lost. And then there's also the goods. He also talked, they dump their goods in Indochina to prevent the development. Like, what goods? Like, what American goods can I buy now if I want it? Like, I think in Sri Lanka, they made us, through like all the IMF and all that crap, switch to like US LPG for cooking gas. But like, McCain said that Russia was a gas station with nukes. That's America now. Like, all they're doing is they're pointing nukes, saying, oh, buy our gas or we'll nuke your children. That's kind of all that's left of the American proposition to the world. And it used to be like in the 1970s, right? Like, the movies were good, the music was good, and they had blue jeans and like rock and roll. And those are, that's, if you're going to be corrupted, it was like least interesting stuff to be corrupted by. Now, what do you get corrupted by? It's like a bunch of uncles like Pete Hegseth and like Donald Trump, or like they're still using Tom Cruise in the propaganda movies. Like, the guy is 60 something years old. Like, they don't even have like a replacement. They're just playing dress up. And just finally, the third thing he talked about, or the first thing, was they supply their henchmen with armaments to massacre the Indo-Chinese people. And you can see they can't even arm themselves. So like Australia has ordered nuclear submarines that will never be delivered. And then in the Gulf countries, they're like asking for missile defense missiles, which won't be supplied. And those US bases won't be rebuilt. So all of these, you're having a situation like the 1970s oil crisis, but in reverse. After the 1970s oil crisis in Sri Lanka, socialism was discredited. Like the collapse here, which happened, it hit us hard, was blamed on the previous socialist governments. And then we had 20, 30 years of neoliberalism. But this, as Marandi always points out, and he's clear to do this, it's not being blamed on Iran. This is being blamed on the empire. It's being blamed on capitalism. So in that sense, I don't think a change is happening and that people are becoming revolutionary, but I think people are becoming evolutionary in the sense that they see that this neoliberal system doesn't work, and people are naturally more socialist, as in socialism just means kind of taking care of your own people and like not being suicidal on behalf of like foreign bankers. So I think that's kind of a natural position if you stop cooing it so much.
Yeah, as the Andrei Martyanov said, at least in the 70s, the West had the peak of culture, like as he says, Benny Hill and Deep Purple. But anyway, all that being said,
that's better than what they have now, man. Benny Hill like literally runs circles. I saw someone doing the Benny Hill music about the shooting, like the ballroom shooting, and it was like a bunch of Secret Service agents running around like shooting each other in the butt. Like, come on.
As they would on the Benny Hill show. So anyhow, you asked a question about, the question you asked, Sina, which I've forgotten now, but brought to mind
the choke points. What
the choke point,
the rest of the world will start.
Yeah, but what came to my mind was, in 1947, this Russian engineer who wanted to design planes, I think, he ended up designing weapons, and he was Mikhail Kalashnikov, and he produced this amazing automatic rifle that was known as the
flag of countries all over the world.
The great equalizer, right? It was the great equalizer because it put in the hands of the people a weapon to defend themselves that was vastly superior to anything that the US came out with. These M16s, you get a bit of sand into it, they stop working. And we are seeing the same thing today, like the pillars of the West. There was also this monopoly on knowledge, right? This is really what sustained, at the end of the day, violence and the monopoly on technology of death, right? But shout out to this Russian lady who did Sci-Hub like about 20 years ago. Now all the science is everywhere. Everybody has access to it. And so you get Iran producing these Shahed drones, the famous flying mopeds, who are the great equalizer, and the drones are the great equalizers. You see this in Lebanon today, right? Where literally today the Zionist terror gangs are pulling people out of northern Lebanon because they are literally getting smoked by $100 drones with those
fiber optic cables
that are unjammable, right? And today they had an attack with 5 of those, and that puts the fear of Armageddon into those crazy.
This is from the Ukraine war too. Like this was partly what brought this out of the Pandora's box that they opened in Ukraine is now butterflying affecting them. Sorry, I'm mixing metaphors here, but all the way across West Asia, now they're in this situation where the reality is, I believe that Hezbollah was hoping for an Israeli invasion. That this is exactly where you want a Zionist entity to pursue its policy of expansion, because then you can't just expand with an air force. You can't just have planes and bomb people. You have to move in. You have to set up bases. You have to set up roads. You have to connect it to your ongoing land. And the fact that they can't even, remember, they didn't attack them in South Lebanon only. They attacked them inside Palestine. So now
about 150 kilometers deep.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Well, with this today's attack was 150 deep. Was it today, really?
No.
Today was on the border.
That was their maximum range.
Oh, maximum range. No, but I mean today they are using FPD drones inside the entity. Which
inside
is
the
like,
entity,
yeah.
and they smoke this kind of
Yeah,
munition
APC.
truck,
Yeah, it was like something
and
like that.
it
Yeah.
was in the courtyard of a synagogue of all places, right?
Yeah,
And so,
wow.
so now the Zionists are kind of whining that their
Dude,
holy.
the Zionists like blew up synagogues, like they targeted them in like Iran. That's like
Yeah,
Iran.
they did.
There was
Well
a video
known now.
going around of an Iranian guy complaining. He said, "Oh, they told me to move beside the synagogue. They won't attack the synagogue. They attack the synagogue.
Yeah.
I want my money back."
So, guys, I haven't quite finished my points, but keep on donating. We have 6 donations already, 879. Please donate. Even $1. Somebody donated $3. Thank you very much. Small donations mean a lot. Please do donate. It's not enough to talk. It's not enough to consume content. It's very important to do something material. And one of the things we can do is to send back some of that money that our imperialist overlords extract from our brothers and sisters in the global south. And the last dimension of the great equalization is really the information space, because once again, say what you want about social media and the control by the imperialist Zionist forces over most of the digital public square. Information is much freer, circulates much better than before. Like the information game of the Iranians would not have been possible in the information environment that we had at the time of the first and second Iraq War, at the time of the Vietnam War. I was there. I remember you had just the MSM. You had to decode it all the time. And then you had those militant newspapers, which didn't have that up-to-date information anyway and weren't that accessible. So that is equalizing the field in a way that I don't think the imperial overlords could have imagined, and that I don't think they control, and which is why all their cunning plans tend to fall flat on their faces. And one last thing that I found absolutely stunning this weekend, which also says something about those inflection points. If you care to look, you will see them absolutely everywhere. And this is in a different field, but it's in the field of artificial intelligence, right? Turns out that most big US firms scan their CVs through AI. And there's a study that just come out that the AI will actually select for CVs that are written by that AI. So if you have ChatGPT scanning your CVs, it will select for ChatGPT written CVs, right? So eventually they don't hire for talent. They hire people who get their CVs written by ChatGPT. So they are turning their mega corporations into things that will kill themselves by trying to extract value by replacing folks with AI. Whereas in China, by the way, they just passed a law, I think this week, that says a corporation does not have the right to replace any worker with AI. And then they use AI to automate tasks that can be automated, but not to replace humans. And I think that, obsession with getting rid of humans, with extracting value out of eliminating humans, is actually folding in on itself. And that's another inflection point. So, I feel very optimistic. And one last thing I would say is I actually trust the process, and I trust the axis of resistance. The empire cannot stop, so it will eventually commit suicide by AOR. And the more on the other side people show themselves to be human, to be reasonable, they're not becoming weak as a result, right? They can reopen the entrances to their missile cities that had been blocked by bombs and all the rest of it. Whereas on the other side, the US cannot produce those missiles anymore. So, I think I heard one guy said 80% of their Tomahawks have already been fired. So it's
50.
literally
It's probably
running,
50.
It's 50, but it's still running on fumes, right? We are we are literally weeks away from having empty ammo storages on the imperial side. So everything has changed. You see, even ceasefires have changed. They used to be, you cease, we fire. And that's not at all the ceasefire we're seeing in South Lebanon at the moment. And it's not the ceasefire we're seeing with Iran anymore. So the tables have turned, and it's all going in the right direction. And I wouldn't worry about Iran signing a bad deal, because literally this empire cannot stop.
And so if we're talking about running on fumes, Adnan, I put something in the group, like the gas prices. Should we have a look at that? Because basically the last tankers to leave Hormuz on, let's say, February 28th, February 27th, they arrived in the US, I think, in the last few weeks. I don't think there's any more incoming. So now this is Gas Buddy, and this guy is on Twitter freaking out because he's like, we didn't build it for like this much change, like this much rapid change. Like it tracks gas prices on basically like a station to station, state by state level. And this is
Dude's
the
gonna have a nervous
average.
breakdown. It's just getting started. He's like having a nervous breakdown.
Yeah, so people are posting, oh, it costs this much here. And he's like, no, that's below cost. Like, they're losing money at, like, and he's talking about some, like, gas station like Tennessee. But this is the average price. And you can see it's going vertical, which is not good. You can see, I mean, it's good for us, but you can see that, like, it spiked immediately after the war because it should. But then you can see they kind of stabilized it based on market manipulation. So whereas China used its strategic reserves like strategically and didn't use them, and instead sort of they basically cut off exports, the US has actually increased exports through this period quite dramatically, because again, there's this illusion that the US is like run by people and hasn't been for centuries. It's run by corporations, and then these guys will sell oil wherever it makes the most money. There's no concept of a strategic reserve. That's just like your market manipulation reserve. And you can see they use that, but now it's run out. And it's not just that like the oil abroad is more expensive and the US is buying it more expensively. It's the oil that the US produces, which again isn't exactly the right type, but they're selling that on the open market. So oil is a sort of liquid, literally a liquid commodity. The prices should stabilize. But we've been seeing these huge spreads between Oman and Brent, between like WTI and then whatever we get on the side of the world here. And then those spreads kind of equalize because the guy's selling stuff there. Like, why would we sell it to these American people who we do not care about when we could sell it to other people we equally do not care about for more money, which is the one thing they do care about. And so these prices they've gone up. So it was at like 290. Now it's at 440. So for the US, that's painful. In Sri Lanka, I actually only know our oil price. I know that 25 liters costs 11,000 rupees because we have a ration, but they have no concept of rationing. They're just going to get, so if you don't do rationing, then you get shortages. They're going to get shortages. And I think they're maybe like a week out from that. So people are like, what Iran should do, whatever, like they've done it, right? It's like they fired the bullet 45, 50 days ago. It has hit the American brain, but because they like don't have a brain, it's just taking a while for the signal to reach the rest of their sort of zombie body.
Yeah, very interesting points documenting the continuing effects. And it's not going to, even if they stop this now, it's going to have all kinds of ripple effects for maybe 6 months, a year. So as you say, Indi, they already did it. Like the damage is done. It could become worse, but it's already done. And this is going to have these big, consequences. It's interesting to think about what the future of the management of the Strait of Hormuz is going to be, and whether or not the empire will try to resurrect some kind of concept of international law that it has so dispensed with and destroyed in order to try and reconstruct some kind of freedom of navigation. You see that what was happening just recently in the UN.
I mean, it's oppression of navigation, but go on.
Yeah.
Because Iran couldn't move, man.
It is. I mean, but I saw something interesting that I thought, was maybe worth discussing. And I first came across it in Jadal English discussion that Ali Alizadeh had with Mariam Jamshidi, who's an international law specialist who wrote this kind of interesting piece that apparently has also had quite a lot of circulation in Iran. That appeared in The Nation on April 17th. Only one side, and it's been translated and is doing the rounds, like over there. Only one side has clearly broken the law in the Strait of Hormuz, and then in small letters there, and it isn't Iran. And so she was detailing and arguing about how Iran has kind of followed pretty carefully up to this point precedents that it could defend in some kind of legal process or at the UN. And in fact, they actually brought up many of the arguments that I think she used in their response to the US and other countries' allegations of violation of international law in the UN. They brought up quite a number of the arguments, pointing out that they have never, that firstly, the US has never, adhered and is not a signatory to the law of the sea, the famous kind of, law that everyone at the UN was citing, and Iran as well has never ratified it. And so there is another set of customary law that recognizes and allows that when it's in your, territorial waters, a body of water falls within your territorial waters, you do have control. Particularly, nobody has a right necessarily of freedom of transit, through your territorial waters. And particularly in times of security, you have every right, to exercise control for security purposes. And that going forward, if they want to develop a toll, there are mechanisms where they can make a strong case for offering some services, security services, registration, etc., and charge for them, and it won't be considered a toll. It'll be considered a mandatory service. So this is how the game is played. And
it's
so
not
it
a
comes
fee,
back to,
okay? It's not a fee. It's a tax.
exactly. It's not it is.
Yeah, it's a jizya. It's fine.
It's a jizya. Oh, where did Adnan go?
Oh, they got him finally.
They got him.
No, I'm back. The point is that it's
no,
not
but don't trust Adnan now. He's been turned. Sorry.
It's not a toll. It is a fee. Like they will charge for services, right? They'll create these services.
Yeah.
So it comes back to what you said, like quite some time ago, Sina, about Iran, sanctioning back. This is a mechanism that they will be able to use and develop. So anyway, I recommend it for listeners to go check out this article, but also the discussion that Mariam Jamshidi had with Alizadeh on the show. It was really quite interesting. I mean, I don't invest a lot in the legitimacy of international law, but what's fascinating about this case is the way in which, just like that principle of reciprocity, Iran, even if it isn't the era of strategic patience, is still, however, capable of applying pressure, going up the escalation ladder, matching, tit for tat in this reciprocal fashion, but doing so in a methodical, rational, constrained, restrained way to be the one who's actually exercising control in this situation.
Yeah.
And
So
that's very important.
Moshtaba Khamenei has a statement about this, actually, which he just came out with. He said, the nations of the Persian Gulf region, who for many years were accustomed to the silence and submissiveness of their rulers before bullies and aggressors, have in the past 60 days witnessed firsthand the beautiful manifestations of the fortitude, vigilance, and jihad of the brave men of the Army and IRGC naval forces. And then he says, by divine power, the bright future of the Persian Gulf region will be a future without America, dedicated to the progress, comfort, and welfare of its nations. We share a common destiny with our neighbors across the waters of the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman. Foreigners who cause mischief from thousands of kilometers away out of greed have no place here except at the bottom of these waters. So that's, to me, international law is that's like the receipt they give you when they're robbing you. It's like, here, I took your stuff. Here's like a piece of paper. Like, it should be broken. And what they're reconstituting here is just sort of like natural law, which is just, I mean, it's the Persian Gulf, right? Like, they're there. You can't like take their stuff and then shut them out of it. And they're, again, there's just like this crazy world we live in where America, I think it's tens of thousands of kilometers away, has anything to do with this. And it's just like, don't, just stay in your lane. And then this is clearly Iran's lane.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this too, is that like what the because you said this earlier, Adnan, about what China can, this might be a time to unify China. See, I'm of the view that Iran, by waiting for the imperialists to attack, it gave Iran sort of carte blanche in terms of what it could do to respond. And I believe that was a pivotal move because there were so many provocations, just so many. And everybody, including myself, were screaming, saying, like, what is this policy? What is this strategic patience? And it's only then did I realize, by waiting for them to attack, then you can say, okay, you attack. This is the consequences of your attack. We didn't do anything. We're innocent. And because even then, like, people who say, like, oh, attack now, oh, like, do a preemptive attack, like, you still end up in the same place. You still end up in a war, right? You can't just, there's no preemptive attack that will destroy your enemy's ability to ever fight back. I mean, it's not Egypt in 67, whatever, when they bombed the Air Force, like most of the Air Force, when the Israeli military bombed most of the Egyptian Air Force, that is to say. So I never feel like, because you're still in this situation where, okay, you bombed them, you made a move, and then now it's their turn, and then now you're in it. That would have happened no matter who started it. But the fact that the imperialists started it, they get to say, okay, now we're going to take, like, this is now the consequence of you starting this war. And on top of that, I had long said this, go me, hooray, I was right on this one. I said that, the global economy exists at the leisure of the Iranian people, which is to say that little strip of waterway it's incredibly important, and it exists. It exists as an artery and a vein, really, of global commerce, because Iranians allow it to. And in the meantime, they were suffering under a brutal siege, which was not like enforced with boats. I mean, it was in a sense, because they did raid Iranian boats every now and then, and Iran would respond and whatever. But it was illegal. It was a legal web. It was a legal blockade, because it said that, okay, we can't stop country X from doing business with Iran. We can't do that. We can't, like, preemptively. However, we can punish country X for doing business with Iran, and we have that economic, legal, juridical power to find you and hunt you down and take away your business and secondary sanctions and all this and whatever, right? And so this was their strategy, and it was an invisible, legal, juridical, kind of theoretical siege, very real, very practical, but it didn't have the kind of military force that the one now has. This military one is a lot less powerful than the previous one that Iran broke by closing Hormuz. Closing Hormuz made all of the American actions against Iran at the global level, and so, for instance, Canadians did the bidding of their Zionist masters and Zionist Zio-American masters, and they didn't allow the Palestinian or the Iranian FIFA delegation to join some meeting in Vancouver or something today. That's just, like, you can do that, but, like, that, guess what? Canadians aren't getting any oil from the, like, fucking Strait of Hormuz. Like, they don't really get much, mind you, but in the sense that, like, those products and that economy, like, there's going to be a price to pay for isolating and punishing Iran. Taking up the Zionist line on Iran, hexing people, chasing them, stealing buildings, just getting them out of, kicking them out of their jobs or whatever, hunting them down, going to their houses like they were doing a couple of years ago, and in like Toronto and stuff, being like, oh, this is an official from the Islamic Republic, and making, I mean, that's where we were at, that level of pathetic, desperate, like, in terms of chasing after anyone you can. But at the end of the day, through this war, by launching this war, it gave Iran the context it needed to make a run for it, to run the blockade, to break the blockade, and not just break the blockade, but impose their own. I mean, I will not stop saying this. This was a geopolitical wrestling move that will reverberate for maybe centuries to come if this is playing out the way it was, because it looks like, I mean, unless there's some miraculous 11th hour Hail Mary pass that I don't really see happening. I mean, the US empire is toast. It's cooked, as the Zoomers say. It's cooked. There's no going back from this. There's no. It's centerpiece of era petrodollar, Zionist foreign policy, and basically violent counter-revolutionary military action. It just won't work on a country as big as Iran. It just won't work. It can't work. And on top of that, anything they try, it hurts their own vassals. It hurts their own. They go after some. So, for instance, one of these days, Israelis will go after some big skyscraper in Tehran. They'll do it. And guess what happens to the Burj Khalifa, guys? It becomes the Burj rubble.
Oh, that's definitely something nobody should wait for. Okay.
Yes.
Look, already, actually, when I was in
Be
Iran
still
in
my beating
December,
heart.
when I was in Iran in December, I saw near Van Nack Square one of the very tall buildings that had damage from the June War. Like, there's no need to wait. You know, the Burj
Well,
Khalifa-
they'll take one. Maybe they'll wait till they take one down. I guess,
but the Burj
because that
isn't
seems, it's
Well-
because that's the thing. It's like Iranians don't need to show that. Like, and there's in this too. People are like, how come like Tel Aviv doesn't look like Gaza? Well, some parts of Tel Aviv do in fact look destroyed. I mean, you shouldn't use Gaza as like a template for human destruction. But some parts of Tel Aviv did receive extreme destruction.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that Iranians are too busy. Like their strategy doesn't coincide with the Zionist strategy of just destroying all life. You don't need to destroy Zionist life in toto in order to defeat Zionism. You just need to defeat Zionism. You just need to remove the Jenga pieces that keep them alive. And Iran has been systematically doing that.
Well, their
So-
main
Yeah,
goal,
and
their main goal has been taking out, because of the, as you're pointing out, Sina, the big stumble of the U.S. for, starting this war, right, is basically that they can take out the U.S. bases, they can, weaken the U.S. position in West Asia. Once that happens, then it's the spider's web. Then
So I don't know if it's a stumble, right?
exactly, and
I don't know if it's a
also
stumble exactly. Sorry.
and also they don't. I mean, I think they just said, officially, we've killed very few people died in the Gulf countries, and they don't neither need nor want to kill the Zionists, because there are problems, right? When they go back home, it will be up to us to deal with them and to
Bro, it's like my problem.
re-educate them or something. I hope not too many go to Sri Lanka, but you guys, you guys are gonna have to make sure they don't feel too welcome. But there was
it's
this,
not going well.
it's not at all, by the way, it's not at all, as ode to John Traddle said in the comments, it's not at all they're putting on the Hormuz. It's a donation. Speaking of which,
Yeah, the IRGC is going to set up a Patreon.
right? That's
Just
right. A shop. So
Just listen to our podcast. You have to listen to our podcast to pass the straight. Like,
two donations to the appeal that
No, listen to
Brother
this
Sina pointed to, Mahmoud and Mohammed Project, and also more donations to Fatima. We are $38 short of 1,000. Please, let's get there. And by the way, we are 10 subscribers short of 2,000 subscribers on our Substack. Subscriptions is free, and I'm autistic, so I'm a sucker for round numbers. So please get us over the 2,000 subscriptions line. It's very easy. In the general inflection point file, I don't know if you saw this, but a couple of days ago, this March insurance company, UK-based, said that shipping insurance companies have added a clause obliging ship owners to coordinate with Iranian authorities to ensure safe passage to the Strait of Hormuz. So it tells you who the new sheriff in town is. And I think Iranians, being, very civilized people, will be content with a charitable donation to the IRGC orphan fund or something. And there's another thing that happens, speaking of the demise of white empire, is one of those Arleigh Burke destroyers this is top of the range new stealth missile warship caught fire. It spontaneously combusted. It's lost all propulsion and needs to be towed away to somewhere.
It's such
Strange
bad
things
luck.
are happening. I know it's such bad luck. It's not just the refineries that are going up in smoke or the warehouses all over the US. It seems also the contagion is reaching the.
So I'll have to go in a minute because my child is hungry. But I just want to add one thing. We talk about this like geopolitically and militarily, which is interesting. But in those analyses, the empire always comes off as like stupid, basically. Like, why is it doing this? It's against its interests. I think it's important to understand that its interests are kind of business related, and the business is private equity. So the private equity business, Trump is not like a political guy. He's from the business world. And the private equity business model, which is kind of illegal in other parts of the world, but in the US, it's like a leveraged buyout. You go in, you take over an institution, you load up, you can buy it with that institution's own debt, actually, in a weird way. And you load up that say Toys R Us, you load it up with debt, and you can do a bunch of stupid projects if you want. That's fine. Media, noise, great. You pump it up, and then it crashes, and then you bounce. But you get paid the whole time. So it's basically the mafia business model.
The pump
you can
and
watch
dump.
Goodfellas. Yeah, so it's the mafia business model. Like if you watch Goodfellas, or there's an episode of The Sopranos which covers it. It's pretty. You basically in Goodfellas, they take over a restaurant, they run up bills on the joint's credit, and then they sell the stuff out the back for cheap. So that's kind of what the private equity guys have done to the U.S. They've taken over the U.S. Treasury, and then they like unload stuff through Ukraine. They unload it through Israel. They unload it through Iran. All that stuff is like, oh, they're wasting so much money. No, somebody's making that money. And then with the oil prices, like, oh, the oil prices are, yeah, someone's getting paid off those prices. So it is a private equity model. It doesn't make sense when you're like, how do I run stuff for the next 20 years, the next 100 years? It doesn't make sense politically. But it does make sense in like, how do I get paid this quarter? And also if I'm sitting in Mar-a-Lago, how do I get like paid tonight on Polymarket? So you have to understand the sort of class structure of America has changed. And it's run kind of by private equity guys. And what's happening in America is a pretty classic private equity pump and dump bust out. And that explains kind of more than like why they're killing themselves, because they make a killing. No,
But the thing is, the killing that they're making will be the last one they make in this region, though. That's the thing. Like that's what I don't.
Yeah, so capital
understand.
moves, man. They kept moving.
Yeah.
They blew out Amsterdam. They blew out London. They blew out Washington. I don't know what's next, but hopefully nowhere. But it's not the first time they pumped and dumped like an imperial country. And you'll have to excuse me. My son is hungry.
Thank you so much, Indi, for your
Take care, Indi. Thank you.
Thanks, Indi.
And we'll see you soon for the next one. And also, everyone should watch out for, hopefully, it's edited and ready to go very soon. Maybe I will be able to post it sometime tomorrow. Our discussion on Quran as geopolitics. Those of you who are patrons or Substack subscribers have heard the audio, but if you want to watch the free available video, we'll be publishing it very soon. So do check it out.
Yeah, thank you. I learned a lot from that. And thank you, everybody. And
I wanted to, maybe move to another topic because we had this point here, or at least a reference, to tactics and strategy, why the left keeps failing. Lenin saw this coming. I was just thinking about this a little bit because there's been a lot of news about, the sequestering and capture of the global Samud flotilla that was, launched. I can't remember exactly what day, but like a week ago, basically, it was undertaking another mission. And we see here that both Hamas and Hezbollah released statements condemning the Israeli occupation forces' piracy quote unquote, an attack on the global Sumud flotilla on April 30th. So that's today, over 1,000 kilometers from the Gaza shoreline. And, we've got some other statements, quotations from their statements. This is on Vocal Politics, a very good kind of, frontline news source, reporting all over the place, but including in Lebanon. And we had Hussein Asaf's a discussion with Hussein Asaf, who reports for Vocal Politics in Lebanon. So it's a great source. Do check it out. Hezbollah commends the exceptional courage and heroism of the free activists participating in this flotilla, who challenged the unjust blockade imposed on the Gaza Strip, affirming that the cause of Palestine remains alive in the conscience of those who believe in the values of justice and humanity, no matter how much the terrorist enemy, along with the forces of global arrogance, attempts to marginalize, erase, or extinguish it. And I think useful that they're talking about global arrogance, istikbar, again, the subject that of Iran versus the Istikbar Empire in my office hours with Professor David Yagoubian from last week. And then Hamas also urged activists to remain steadfast in the face of these terrorist attacks and to continue their noble humanitarian mission of conveying the voice of the oppressed in Gaza, exposing the crimes of the occupation and its policy of starvation against our Palestinian people, who have been subjected to genocide during the 2 years of brutal Zionist aggression. So I guess my question here, these are, kind of appreciations from the resistance. I guess my question in some ways is, during the past few months, the cause of Palestine has, and since the so-called ceasefire, it's been hard to raise money, for people. Donations have fallen off. They've been, kind of abandoned when it comes to news reporting, and attention even from us and people like us has been turned towards, the Ramadan War on Iran and, the front in southern Lebanon and so forth. And the question is of course, they're all so intimately connected and related. Sina just already said that, the goals of Netanyahu to remake the Middle East, which he announced, I think, on the very day after the October 7th attacks, he announced that their goal in the ensuing military kind of assault upon Gaza was not just limited to, vengeance upon Gaza, but to remaking the map of the Middle East, which is, of course, being contested. So it's all been very connected, but we haven't always been talking as much about the Palestinian front in Gaza or in the West Bank. So, but my question is this like an effective attempt? Has it, it has helped, raise some profile again about, what's happening there. But this is the third or fourth in the last few years of the global Sumud flotillas, and the same thing keeps happening, that activists get arrested and taken into Israeli custody. The boats get, appropriated. So, what should we be thinking right now about effective tactics and strategies in our solidarity movement? What are some of the ways that we can see, some kind of new ways of finding out what are the Straits of Hormuz, for us that can be actually effective. So just wanted to sort of put that out there.
Yeah, I I think the flotillas have run their course. I don't know what more can be gotten out of them. Like, it's a very expensive affair, and then at the end of the day, the Zionist terror gangs board your boats. I don't know what's the idea. You don't resist, so you get them to slap you around the face, maybe insult you, maybe, low-key sexually abuse you, but nothing like what our Palestinian brothers and sisters would be subjected to. And then you get put on a plane back home. What exactly is gained by that at this point? Like, I'm thinking of the amount of money and resources it takes to put these things together, and they could be sent directly to families in Gaza, and it would have even psychologically a bigger impact. I understand why the resistance in Gaza isn't going to tell them, look, guys, why don't you, like Leif Maruf suggested, use those boats and go block a port? Go, the same day they boarded the flotilla, these cargo ships docked in occupied Palestine with supplies for making weapons of genocide, right? So what exactly is achieved by those? And today on Twitter, I saw some pretty objectionable responses by Flotilloids. I think, Sina, you can correct me on how we're going to call those guys now, the Flotilloids or the Flotilla Church or something, responding to Palestinians who said, this is useless, do something material that will stop something instead of just getting non-violently abused by the Zionist terrorists. And people saying, well, we are allies, you don't know what you're talking about, you're just stupid and everything, and displaying unhealthy levels of white saviorism. So I'm getting a little bit concerned. Get me off the boat. Get me off the boat. I'm off the flotilla train.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Sina.
This is a tricky one.
Mhm.
This is a tricky one because you're in this situation where there's clearly people who are courageous, who have principles. Notwithstanding the story of one of the organizers who was stooping some people on the boat. That's not so good. But as a whole, I would say that the flotilla members are far more courageous than, say, I am. Like, I sit in the comfort of my house, and I click a mouse, and I don't take any risks. In fact, the people on my shows take more risks than I do because I'm my own boss in the end. I do think that in terms of resources, how we spend resources, it's not like there's a finite amount and then you waste them and then that's it, they're gone. I believe that if people want to give their money to a flotilla, if they want to raise that money, if that's something they want to do, and even if it's pointless, I wouldn't necessarily say don't do that. It's not something I would do. It's not something I would give my money to. It's not something I would even endorse. But like, I'm just some fucking dude. Who the hell am I? Like, go do your thing. If you want to resist that way, go do it. Like, the Elbit people do it. They do their resistance, and I do my resistance my way, and other people do. So I don't know. I wouldn't be in a position to say anything in terms of what people should do, how people should sort of forge their resistance. The resources argument, I don't necessarily buy. The thing that Leith says, I believe, is correct. I think fundamentally he does make a point about use those boats to block, to do, like, use the same logic of nonviolent protest at home. I think there is a very good kernel of truth to that. I won't, however, go so far as to say it's a waste of time. It's a this or that. Like, yeah, I won't say that. I won't. Sorry, that sounds like a cop out. It isn't, but I'm just not in the position to tell people what to do or what not to do. I'm like me. I do what I do, and it's just there's a global campaign to liberate Palestine. That campaign will not be perfect and smooth. It won't run. It is a people's campaign. It is grassroots. It cuts across countries and movements. It's to the questioner, there's somebody saying it's not quote unquote pointless. It raises awareness and promotes mobilization. I'm actually of the view that awareness is not really a thing. That like people, that's so I don't want to necessarily go down that angle. However, I also don't say that the people who are on that flotilla are aware, and they do want, and I don't know who they, I mean, I know we interviewed one of them for Red Nation, David Adler, and you could clearly tell he was extremely traumatized, that like he, like I'm sure I'm not talking out of, what's the expression, talking out of school? I'm sure he won't mind me saying this. He basically had to pause to go and cry, like the interview. Like the guy was like super traumatized. Am I gonna like sit there and be like, you were a dumbass, buddy? You should have gone and done something else, sucker. Like I'm not gonna be that guy. Like who the hell are you to tell him? Like he did that. Like that was his choice. So I would bite my tongue in terms of how I feel about the flotillas, because there's more. I'm just gonna resist my way. And if people want to do that, that's on them. I won't give my money, but I don't have any money to give anyway, so I'm not the audience for that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It is, complicated, but I think, we have to have some of these discussions, and in the generous sort of way that you were doing, Sina, and in the critical way, that Laith and Benji are raising, kind of these points. And I think Sasha in the chat, Sasha, great to see you, comrade, brother, that a positive function, of the flotilla, I mean, he said the only positive function, is that people in Gaza can see that others still care. This is one big, point of even the demonstrations that we know didn't accomplish a whole lot when it came to changing, UK policy with the millions who were in the street over months, every 2 weeks, national marches,
what do we
London.
accomplish with this show? What do we accomplish? Do we accomplish anything? Like,
no,
what do we do?
Well, we raise a little
like,
money. That's all.
Yeah, like fine. Yeah, like we raise a little money. We amuse people for 2 hours. We give them, we create a platform. But like, what do we do? So like, I'm not in the business of being like, oh, you do nothing, I do something. You do nothing, I'm the something doer. I'm not the guy who does that. It's just not my style.
Yeah, we get that. Yeah, we get that.
I meant to...
That's not your style. You're not doing that. That's right. We already agree on that, Sina.
I hope I wasn't doing that, but
My
if I
point,
was, I didn't.
yeah, I mean, I think we have to have these discussions, though, because we want to come up with things to be more effective, to motivate one another, to think through what can we do? What's our Strait of Hormuz? How can we get organized? And these are not going to happen, necessarily online, but we need to inspire people to actually think about what they can do in their own capacity, so that they can be like Sina and resist in the way that they are going to do it. Not to tell other people how they should do it, but find like-minded people, build some community and solidarity, and try to be more effective. Because that's what I would say is that, I mean, even if it's only for the demonstration effect of giving hope to people in Gaza, which is what like we try to do with the small amounts of money that we can raise, with the course that I'm trying to give, is give them further resources and boosting so that they can continue to develop themselves and resist and stay on their land, and know that they are valued, because this is one of the truly dehumanizing things, is how ignoring and neglecting, that has a big psychological toll. I would think, Benji, you would probably be able to tell us, is that it means a lot to have some sense of solidarity. It gives people some greater strength, and they've shown such immense and incredible strength that at least the small things we can do to be encouraging, to be supportive, to give a little aid or help or assistance, and say, you are not forgotten. I see so many things on social media, people saying, just at least acknowledge, this, we're making this appeal, please don't forget about us. So I think that is important, but I think we also have to try and be more effective too at the same time. I'm sort of consumed by the feeling of the failures that we have had over the last 2-3 years. I think we have to really take that on the chin as much as people have done. Maybe we're not in the
do you
condition
mean
to actually
Westoids?
be effective. Sorry?
Westoids.
Do you mean Westoids, like
yes.
our failure? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, ours. I mean, I'm talking about us, in the
So
West.
I just want to think about these points a little bit. Like, I use this image from the flood that each of us is a little drop of water, and we become part of the flood if we flow in the direction of the flood, right? We can flow in the direction of imperial supremacy or defeatism, or we can flow in the direction of having our little drop of water flowing in the direction of the flood. And what I do is I don't know that I do this to entertain people. If I entertain people, that's okay. But I actually do this to help as many of those little drops to flow in the same direction as possible. And we're not, creating revolutionary organizations, but we have, with our platforms, the opportunity to try and think things through collectively and to see, so in which direction can my drops of water flow the most effectively, right? And we can have those conversations. And I think direct action on the ground in the belly of the beast is an extremely effective way to be part of the flood. And it's also a way that you can discuss in great detail on those platforms for very obvious reasons. But if you're able to do that, it's a very good idea to do it, and do it off the internet is my personal advice as a non-professional of these things. On the other side of things, then, if you are going to mobilize time and money, yeah, sure, do it in the way you want, and we'll resist in our own ways. But sometimes I don't want to just go, to each their own, we're all individuals, we do whatever we do. We are, but is there a way that we can also think through what collectively is the most useful? Like, if I am going to give money to Gaza, I won't give it to, when they started taking money out of what was it called, UNRWA, my first reaction was to go and make a donation to this. And then just by being educated, by interacting with people online, by going on Twitter, by listening to, I think the first fundraisers I actually came across were from some of you guys, which you've all been doing this very early on. I remember Justin Potter saying, give until it hurts a little bit. And I started to think through this, right? And the donation to people who you identify on the ground are through people you trust and it goes on the ground. There's something very organic in that. There's something like, I am really helping people resist on the land. Giving to the flotilla, I'm not saying you're a bad person if you do it, but when you give to the flotilla, it's less clear to me that you are actually having that effect, especially, like, if we think about political education, popular education, revolutionary education is about praxis. So you have your idea, you implement it in the world, and then you go back and you change your idea. You change your tactics, you change the way you get to your goal. The flotillas have been going on for, 10, 20 years, and it's always the same scenario. And I'm not disputing the courage of the people doing it. I'm not disputing they get really abused, like what they did to even the Greta flotilla in occupied Palestine was absolutely horrible. And people are going to be traumatized for years out of this. But if I were to advise someone, I'd say, don't give yourself up to genocidal psychopaths. It doesn't, if you have to, sure, I won't criticize you and I won't say you're an idiot, but why give yourself up as a victim, See if you can put what you do to something that will materially help people on the ground, either by doing something that stops the war machine, and you could, use your boats to blockade a port, at least maybe ICE will treat you as badly because they've been trained by the Zionist terror gangs. But in Europe, you wouldn't be treated quite as badly, and you might have more of an impact. So think about your impact, right? When you give to, and also there's this thing when you give to people in Gaza, and many people have reported it, and I keep on talking about it. When you make a donation and when you help Fatima getting to $1,000, we're only $18 away, I believe. You feed, you nourish. Oh, we are $1,053. Thank you, everybody. I'm sure everyone who donated tonight can feel that as you do this, you nourish the spirit of resistance inside of you, but not just for yourself, but also by giving something to people who are actually resisting by existing, So that would be what I do. And I hope whatever small impact I have, if I have that impact, someone said, thank you for educating me about the flotilla. If someone after watching this show goes, oh, I used to give money to the flotilla, now I will give it straight to Gaza, my life won't have been in vain. I'm serious about this because it kind of multiplies my actual material impact. So I always say, and it's important to me, that I'm not just a content creator. Yes, I create content, but I don't create content just to create content and to get views and all the rest of it. I do it because I believe consciousness and matter are in constant interaction. And so you speak, you narrate, and you do this to have a material impact. That material impact is what revolutionary action is about. And today, in terms of people in Gaza, people in the Lebanon, people in Iran, it's about giving money. And by the way, it's no accident that in a socialist country, for all its, characteristics, such as China, in the 12 Days War, there were literally thousands of Chinese sending money to the Iranian embassy saying, please buy more missiles with my hard-earned cash, right? And I haven't seen that much Chinese money going to the flotillas because those people know something about material revolutionary action.
Yeah, and I think Francis's comment here is true and very helpful and useful, that the work is raising, sending money, special to mutual aid and orgs and institutions with an excellent track record. Fighting here works in many different ways. And I would just, point out, I had a wonderful conversation with Palestine Action founder, Huda Amori, co-founder. And there's a reason why there is such state repression now directed against that organization, which was proscribed as a terrorist organization. They've had a long-running legal battle, but why now, like, a number of people are being charged under terrorism with extreme, and trying to remove jury trials, right? Very important, because they want the state to be solely in charge of securitizing people's dissidents and people's actions to try and stop a genocide. They want to securitize that so that it's fully in their control and they don't have to be responsive to jury trials, because in point of fact, juries, don't support prosecuting people for doing the right thing. This is what they've learned and discovered. So it sharpens the contradiction. It makes clear, that under capitalism, the liberal, democratic traditions and rights and so on will be sacrificed if we actually organize to dissent. And that means that we then become much more clear about, the complicity and how to, target it, and we can widen, hopefully, the struggle. So, it can turn into a much more revolutionary sort of struggle. So I think the things that people have been doing, should be studied. We should analyze these and figure out how we can do them, more successfully. And I would just note that because Palestine has not been in the news, very few people actually consulted that video. It was extremely interesting what Huda Amori had to say. We have a lot to learn from somebody like that who has
The
courageously,
sound was
but
really
also,
bad on that one. Sorry. So I will say that it was hard to hear that one. Sorry, Adnan.
well, that's the, people don't be precious, okay? The sound might
Sabotage.
not be perfect, but
As the
what you're
producer, I want to
learning there
apologize.
is connecting with, effective struggle that clearly is making a difference, which is why it's eliciting this kind of state repression. And this is somebody who has thought through very carefully what it is to be in solidarity and ways of finding the Hormuz Strait in the UK, right? So that's I think we can learn a lot from those movements. And I just appreciate both of you having, kind of honest thoughts about, where do we stand on these things? It isn't about demonstrating, because as you said, Sina, like, who are we? We're just behind. We're doing these like things that we can do. We're not doing anything that's incredibly risky and so on. We're doing what we can. It's not about trying to kind of condemn others for not being good enough activists and all of that, but it's more taking a look at what's happening and trying to motivate, but more than motivate and mobilize, figure out together how we can be effective. And that will come best from dialogue and discussion and seeing what really has worked or had an impact and coming up with good strategies there. So I appreciate this discussion. I don't know if we want to move on to there was one other sort of topic that I thought would be worth coming to before we watch a Lego video and round out, as we traditionally do now, which is to talk a little bit about Minab, which has come back to our consciousness because of the wonderful series and work that Helia Dutari is doing. You can watch the video on Jadal English, so yet another reason to go to Jadal English. You can hear Ali Alizade's conversation with Mariam Jamshidi, but you can also watch both the first two episodes of Still Minab. So there are 2 episodes out, and I had a really good conversation with Helia and Bikram about that. That's out on the channel as well. And I just wanted to remind us, because it's been, many weeks now, this war started. One of the reasons why we can be very confident in labeling this the Epstein Empire is because this war began with the slaughter of children. And we can't forget that.
The ritual murder of children.
Yeah, it was so disgusting, and it so transformed. We talked a lot at the time about the significance, because we're thinking about it in political terms, the significance of the martyrdom of Rahbar, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and how it backfired, and actually his sacrifice, his martyrdom, his blood kind of recharged a revolutionary moment and had the opposite effect that the empire intended or expected. And so we talked a lot about that, because it undermined their goals of some sort of regime collapse, quote unquote, like bringing down the Islamic Republic of Iran. But equally important in some ways at that moment, on that first day, has been the framing of the slaughter of children. And so those stories, and what this documentary series is doing, is a direct confrontation with the mechanisms for narration, disinformation of the empire, the way it tries to suppress the voices of the people who have experienced imperial and colonial violence, and to try and reframe it as a mistake or it's AI. And I talked with Dwayne Monroe, that what's the purpose of targeting through AI? It is to remove accountability, to systematize and anonymize, the actions of the imperial death war machine, so that there's no accountability. And this is the kind of thing that we saw in the framing, the imperialist framing in the news media, the so-called investigations, the multiple shifting stories that tried to reframe this clearly deliberate targeting of school children in a civilian, well-marked, well-understood school, into some kind of obfuscatory, way of, almost re-traumatizing everybody through the impunity and arrogance of its failure to take responsibility. So this is a direct counter to that. And I think this series, as it continues, it already has, I think, made a big impact in taking sovereign control of the expression of truth, sovereign control over the narrative. And it's something that I recommend to everybody. And I wondered if you all had seen this, the second episode, and what your thoughts were about the work that it is doing and its significance and meaning, as we are now basically almost 2 months. Aren't we about 2 months since the start of, the beginning, since February 28th? We're essentially 2 months, since then. To remember how it started, in what manner it started, and what it tells us about the nature of this imperialist assault.
Benji, you want to go ahead?
Okay, I'll go ahead. First, we know it's real because there was this guy that was honeypot filmed by the horrible Project Veritas, who's kind of high up in the military bureaucracy in the US, who did admit to that being done by the US, the Minab. I watched the first short film by Elie Dutare, which was so moving. I didn't watch the second one, and but I put it on the thumbnail that when they went to the negotiations in Islamabad, they had seats empty in the plane with the pictures of some of the Minab pictures. I think it's very significant also that Minab wasn't just any school. It was a school for children of officers of the army and people in government. So it was a deliberate attack at what is most precious to the people who are tasked with governing Iran. And I think, was it a double tap or a triple tap? It was certainly a double tap, possibly a triple tap, which is this new, absolutely disgusting way of making sure you get the people who come to help the people who are targeted. And I think Minab it's this thing in which the genocidal empire cannot not show its true nature, right? It thinks that by doing this, like a mafia, it's the say hello to my little friend moment. Like you think you are going to regain power by dishing out the most cruel violence, when in fact you are losing all legitimacy and you are giving over all humanity and all dignity to the people that you are targeting. And it's very significant that the Arakshis plane now as on the side of it, it says Minab 1, is it 168 or something like this? And so it travels around the world with that thing on the plane. And I hope they don't shoot the plane down, but imagine if they do, then they will have also, it will be a quadruple tap. So Minab is going to be a beacon of cruelty and dignity and of remembrance for all the free people of the world. And I have to say, the first film made me cry so much that I wasn't looking forward to watching the second one. But it is also a duty to let all those feelings run through us and to bear witness to some of the pain and to let ourselves feel that human pain that our brothers and sisters in Iran have been feeling on the receiving end of this absolutely depraved crime and really, ritual slaughter, murder of children as befits this demonic Epstein class.
Yeah, I think people should watch the second, even if they watched the first and felt so overwhelmed. It was very hard to watch. It's about a poor girl. The first episode really focuses on a poor girl who suffered like huge burns, survived the attack, but is recovering and burns all over her body. But her brother died, and her parents have been so concerned about her state, her mental state, and even their own, that they haven't really processed. Her father was saying, it doesn't feel real. I don't even know how to say it, that my son died. So they haven't even told her and haven't been able to tell her. And
Heartbreaking.
it's heartbreaking to think of carrying that, So yes, it was very difficult to watch. The second one, of course, again, because we're talking about people who were slaughtered by this callous, disgusting, evil, empire. But I think the second one has some extremely interesting redemptive power, because their mother, the mother of these children, is an unbelievably powerful and strong, insightful, deep woman. And I'll just quote from and I wish we could watch it, because actually, my Farsi is not so good. It's pretty broken and all of that. And Sina might understand it a bit better. But I felt like the translation, while, roughly getting the gist, really didn't translate absolutely everything she said, and also robbed some of the poetic power of her words. So this is how it was translated. One thing brings me peace, speaking about the loss of her children. One thing brings me peace. They are martyrs, and their martyrdom has awakened the world. Like those who fell for our land, their sacrifice bears fruit in these innocent children. From their blood, tulips will grow until the Mahdi, the savior, arrives. And so, I interpreted a little bit about what she's talking about and what kind of defiance she's speaking of. But that had some redemptive, that she was talking about how this martyrdom, this sacrifice, actually is a mechanism. The one thing that gives her some peace is that it is a mechanism to awaken the world to what has happened, to charge them with revolutionary, kind of defiance and rebellion. So I feel like, we need to watch this and we need to be awakened. Okay, that's the point. This sacrifice cannot be meaningless, and it relies on us receiving this message and really feeling the significance of the sacrifice of the people of Iran and what they're doing. Sina, I should let you in to talk about Minab.
Yeah, no, I saw the first one. I haven't seen the second one yet. I was thinking about the role of mourning in all of this, because like the story, as dark as the story of Minab is, because it's just how incredibly fast it is, you have to remember that the preceding, and obviously you guys all know this, but it's kind of been lost in the fray of the war in the last 2 months. But this war was preceded by like a wholesale slaughter of Iranians, like civilians, mostly, some police officers, but those are also Iranians too. And this was 3,000 people were killed in the span of like a few nights. This is like 9/11 scale of murder, a scale of murder that is completely off the charts. I mean, they did a nationwide Maidan. I was screaming from the rooftops. And remember, we had liberals, so-called academic liberals, Marxists, who were carrying water for the story that they concocted to sell this Maidan as a government massacre. Liberals were selling this on so-called leftists. Jadalia, I will name you. You were selling this on your episode with Behruz. Ramari, you were selling this story of, oh, they're killing this stuff. Like, there was a blackout in the country. There was no evidence as to what was actually happening. And people were saying, oh, Iranian government is massacring. That massacre porn was supposed to like basically pave the way legally and like mediatically, I guess, for a larger invasion. And the fact that the Iranian state like ruined their plans, like, and how like is just proof that this whole thing, these last 3 months, they didn't go to schedule. They didn't go to plan. Like something broke severely. And you had these liberals now who were saying that, oh, you know, like, oh, now Iran is resisting. Oh, Iran is doing all this. And now claiming to be on the side of the winners. But meanwhile, they've done their job up until now, which is delegitimizing Iran, basically questioning anything to do with resistance or, oh, IRGC or this and that, and avoiding any topics. When Soleimani died, let me tell you what Jadaliyya did. You don't need to look into it. They basically published an article mourning him and another Iranian who died, and then they canceled it because a bunch of stupid freaking frothing at the mouth regime changers came and bugged them on their Twitter, and because this is the kind of principled stance they take, they deleted the article. Okay, so these now are the kinds of people we have teaching our students, and they are teaching them that, oh, to be a soft regime changer is okay, because if you do it leftistically, it's actually principled. That's where we stand, and we are here, and I am still enraged by my former friends who are helping carry water for Zionist violence on our streets, who now have been unable to sort of fathom that the country that they call the regime has fought so valiantly that the entire world is cheering them on, and they have to sit in their corners in their little cuck chair and say, no, 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 but they did regime. Like, I'm so absolutely sick of pathetic ass-eating Iranian liberals in the West who make fat paychecks from Western institutions, who have been carrying water for the violence done against our people, who are now saying, oh, okay, I guess they had some military prowess. Fuck all of you people. Fuck all of you people. You helped them along the way. You are responsible partly for Minab. You motherfuckers. I hate your guts. You know who you are. And I just like, it's so incredibly enraging to be Iranian in the West sometimes, and to have like a morsel of principle and anti-imperialism in you, because you watch a whole class of people march along to the imperial beat, and meanwhile they still wave Palestinian flags. And meanwhile, the country that has done more for Palestinian liberation than anyone is being smashed, and they have been actively helping it along. So I am like on a personal path against these people. And I know this is like 2 hours in and I'm loopy and it's late past my bedtime, but it's I've been sitting on that one for a while, because I've just watched this happen for years and years. I've watched left liberals mealy mouth their way through incoherence, which is like, oh, they agree with Iranian foreign policy. They agree with the liberation of Palestine. They agree with resistance against imperialism, to a point. They agree against resistance against Zionism. Let's put it that way, at least in principle. But then the actual actors envisioning it, the actual people putting that resistance forward, they say, oh, no, we don't agree with those people. They're not our kind. So I just...
only if they get defeated. They only support those who get defeated.
No,
only the victims. Only the victims. They need perfect victims. They don't want
martyrs and losers and victims. They're okay.
Yeah, it's also like normies will go with the people they think is winning. That's another thing in all this. Now the normies have said, oh, Iran is winning. Okay, we love Iran now. And that's also been funny in all this, which makes you realize that they were only really going with the US or the imperialists or regime changers because they thought that was the winning side. Syria is still a bitter point over all of this, watching and the memories of Syria, and people now who are claiming to be resistoids, who are writing articles about like the resistoid present. You know, they helped carry water on Syria. They helped bring us to this point. So it's just, we have some serious, I would rather go after regime changers in our own camp than flotilla people. Flotilla people actually put their lives on the line and they did something. Meanwhile, we have people who do like the same thing we do, but they take up the pro-imperialist line. Like, it's one thing for us to sit here and click our mice and whatever and do these shows, but at least we're trying to argue back against imperialism. But there's a whole swath of people who help them along, who say, oh, okay, yeah, actually that country is bad, and oh, they do minorities. And I mean, yeah, it's a problem for me, because like it happens on the shows I produce sometimes, which is sad for me, but it's like it's so widespread. It's so widespread that you can just shit on Iran as like a standing point and say, well, I don't agree with the government, but you know, and it's like it's just the frustration, and it feels like a dam has been broken, at least for me, where I'm just going to say this stuff from now on. Like, fuck all of you liberals who helped get us here. You know who you are. And like, yeah, this is, I will always be a tanky. Tankies are fucking right 100% of the time. We always get it right.
1940.
It's the burden of being right carried on our shoulders.
Right since 1917. I just want to say, and I think I'm channeling the chat here, that past your bedtime Sina is vintage Sina, is big Sina.
Exactly.
My children need a wine. I need to feed them.
we need to get you out after dark more often. We need to get you out after dark more often.
It's the werewolf. The Iranian Canadian werewolf.
Yeah,
it's a full moon.
Midnight.
It's after
if we
dark.
can keep him up another 40 minutes, he's gonna go nuclear on those bastards.
Yeah,
Well,
this is the new Sina.
I appreciate it, Sina. Very, very good. It is extremely frustrating, to see this. Yeah, it is. And to see that, the pattern constantly repeat itself, and people don't learn from, like, now who is going around cheering the so-called Syrian so-called revolution? It's so obvious. These people have been quiet and silent about the Syrian situation, because what can they say? They were wrong. They were wrong. Yeah. And then they're going to be wrong on Iran. And actually, because this is going on and it's been so public, and there's so many great Lego videos that are documenting and chronicling and making it fun and cool to recognize the truth of what's going on, that some of them are getting the picture in the middle of it. And so they're cheering the resistance. But as you say, Sina, we keep the receipts. You cannot keep, going around producing the conditions to justify imperial war and then sort of absolve yourself when it actually happens. So I think that is a way of summing up the Minab kind of conundrum, as you put it, is that you don't get Minab without the people cheerleading for the January 8th and 9th riots that happen in Iran, and then repeating all of this propaganda as if it matters. Like, we know and we understand there's lots of different diversity of opinions in Iran. They have a very healthy political culture. Of course, don't show me a place where they're not rounding up dissidents now. Look what's happening in the United States. I'm getting constant emails. I was telling Sina about this. I'm constantly getting emails of people who, their visas are not going through because
Brother Sasha is doing instant psychoanalysis of Brother Sina there in the chat.
Yeah. That's good.
That's the thing. No, Adnan, you were saying they're kicking Iranians out because Iran is winning, and now it's no longer useful anymore to collect your regime changer and say, oh, what did the regime do? Where did the regime touch you, little Ahmed? Like, that's not useful anymore.
I want to say something as the token white guy on the show. We are so propagandized. Like, I still know very little about Iran, right? And I've worked in this life for decades, thinking all those caricatures about the mullah regime, the kind of medieval mindset, the absolute oppression, patriarchal oppression of women at every turn, every corner, and everything. And we just walk around with those things. And I think it behooves us to when a particular society, community, nation, social nature is targeted by empire, the most healthy thing to do is to go, who I probably carry in my own mind lots of trash about this society that I know absolutely nothing about, that I have no independent access except from, from the imperial propaganda on. And I want to say one last thing, just to Syria, is what got me onto you guys. Like I was looking for people who didn't drink the Syria Kool-Aid, and that's how I finally found my tribe in you, Sina, in you, Adnan, in you, Justin, and all the rest of you who know who you are. So thank you for holding the line. And well, at the end of the day, we're gonna park our tanks on their lawns. We know it, they know it, and that's how it's going to end.
That's the tanky dream. We're tankies. Okay, well, I think this is a good, now that we've recovered with a wonderful Sina rant and calling out the hypocrites, we're in a position, I think, now to come to our grand finale and our rousing celebration of the information war, the intellectual world war, the psychological war that is being fought with a devastating insurgency against the empire by explosive media. So I'm looking to see if we have a good suggestion.
Yeah, and plus it's halal, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think Francis Hasso pointed out that there were a couple that might not have been, like about the Epstein Empire, so there are a few disturbing things. If people are worried about violence, it's true there are some violent. I mean, it is about a war, so like it's going to be very hard to avoid some.
Not all of them are made by explosive media, right? There's a lot of there's some imitation ones now too, I think.
Well, there's the Persia Boy also who does them, and there are.
It's a mosaic defense. It's what you call the mosaic defense, right?
Mosaic AI propaganda defense.
Well, I'm an orthodox media, mediaite. I think theirs are the best. They are the most sophisticated with the references. You really, as Francis said, you have to really, they force you to think, and I think also they are going to be a true chronicle of this war. Right, they are live, like after every day, pretty much. There's an update.
Let me call it. There will be PhD. There will be PhD thesis submitted on the Lego videos.
But I'm saying
maybe, guys, but it's going to take a long time to detox from this like Iran hate. It's going to be a long time. Like there probably wasn't the like pro-Viet. I don't know. You tell me, Benji. Or actually, Adnan, you were young, Adnan. You don't remember, but you were.
I remember. I was
like,
there.
Were you? But I mean, like, it probably took you couldn't do like, Vietnamese, like the memes we have now.
Of course,
like,
you could.
The Vietnamese.
Of course, you could. Like, you could go to demonstrations and go ho 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 Chi Minh. Absolutely.
But I just mean in the sense of like it took a long time for that cultural jingoism to like wear off to the point where you can say that like like let's study these Lego things, and I just feel like the Zionist elements of all of this.
Yeah, but you're not thinking dialectically.
Yeah.
The inflection point has been reached, and really, like, there was this thing. The one that really got me was Lexi Alexander. She's a Palestinian filmmaker, and on Twitter, at the beginning of this, like in early March, she said, "Guys, I have a confession to make. I'm a member of a Radio Ham group. And it's all a bunch of, white boomers in their 60s. I pretend I'm a man also. Yeah, shoot me to just fit in there. And 80% of that lot were all going, go Iran, go Iran. And so
the ham radio aficionados are pro-Iran.
Yeah. So there is something going on, and like, I had a client on Zoom and I'd forgotten to move the flags away. And I had just the Iranian flag to start with. And he said, "Is that an Iranian flag behind you?" I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to have it in my session." He said, No, I also think it's, he just expressed some pro-Iran thing, and he is the last person in the world I would have expected to. And it was a professional fault. Please, the board of psychologists, I repent. I won't do it again. But what I mean is, there is something in the air that I've not seen before. And I've been a closet anti-imperialist for so long. Well, I was in the closet first, now in the closet, and then out of the closet again. And things are moving faster than most of us know.
Right. And even more relevant is Sina. They don't just write dissertations and do PhDs in Western academic institutions. That's going to be globally. They're going to be, studying and watching and celebrating these.
There was already someone on Twitter today, Explosive Media posted, who's actually doing a research project on those videos and asking for people to contact her and stuff. It's already happening.
Well, so let's, that's a great lead up. Without further ado, everyone's dying to see which is going to be the video for this closing episode. And here we have.
Hey. Yeah, check the map, homie. We don't play. Never. Listen. Check the map, homie. We don't play. Never. Listen. Lost in our fog, you call us the pirates. Man, check the mirror, dog. You're the one that's biased. Vultures on the water, fiending for the black gold. Straight freeloaders, doing what you're told. Pulled up with destroyers, flexing like you're on the block. But David with the Persian slingshot put you in a shock spot at Persian speedboats. Swerved out in the night, hit that U-turn, homie. Completely lost the fight. $1 billion toys, but you're running from the cloud. World is asking if the gate is open, yes or no. I just looked them in the eye and told them what I saw. Wait a minute, homie. I said, Inshallah. Little orange man, this is straight up Iran. Little orange man, Iran. Little orange man, get straight out of Homer's little orange man. Get out. Little orange man, this is straight up Iran. Little orange man, Iran. Little orange man, get straight out of Homer's little orange. Twitter finger king, fake ring cap, master with the lies. Always tweeting great success while your whole damn squad cries. All get smacked to the Pope, throwing shade at Spain. But you a guppy out, he hit the Persian rain. Got an eagle made of glass, roasting on the holy sea. Mess with me? What? Ghost real quick, flee. Keep capping on the green, faking every single score. This ain't no country club, this a Persian street war. The Gulf is our hood and we holding the key. Get back on your phone, you get no pass for free. Word is asking if the gate is open, yes or nah. I just smile at him, I said Inshallah. Little orange man, this is straight up Iran. Little orange man, Iran. Little orange man, get straight out of Homer's little orange man. Get out. Little orange man, this is straight up Iran. Little orange man, Iran. Little orange man, get straight out of Homer's little orange man. Get out.
And we are back.
Wow. What another masterpiece. There's so many things in there. There's going to be dissertations.
It's so crazy. Just think of the roots that video had to get through. You're talking about because they're inheriting and also I guess I don't want to say regurgitating because it has that bad tone to it, but it is kind of in the bird mama sense. They're feeding it back to the West. But they got those hip hop style is an African American coinage. It's or a vintage. It's not. So they inherit that hip hop, which is immensely popular in Iran and around the world and all this stuff. And it's now, and also those AI engines, which not all of them are made in the West, but of course, like the West and it's like generative whatever has been leading this to a point. And so it's interesting that Iran took these Western things, these things that at least originated, derived from the West, is feeding it back to the West in its like slopaganda warfare. And it's just so brilliant. I never thought in a million years we wouldn't be just like kicking ass on like the battlefield. That part I knew in my heart somewhere. But it's more that like the beating them in the cultural domain is just like a shocker. Because especially when you watched like, as you watch like enough Iranian media like over the years, you know, you don't get the sense that this is like you can go toe to toe with the West, which actually for a lot of the reasons, Benji, you pointed out, is that this like the love of sex and violence in the West and the reliance on it to grab people's attention, to always be a source of like how to keep your attention is to throw boobies at them or like blood at them. Like that's it. It's one of two options. And so it's like that to me is like, this is the antidote to that. This is like a dialectical antithesis to that, where you have this like wholesome halal propaganda, like just thrown out there, made for nothing. Because remember, American propaganda is expensive. It has a whole like the whole freaking $1 billion industry dedicated to it. Iranians just like a dude in a room is like, okay, do this. It's like, just like it says it out there. So the same way that Iranians fight on the cheap on the battlefield, they do it in like the cultural domain. But geez, guys, we went for 2.5 hours.
Can I just brag? Can I just do a little bit of bragging? So I did this post, and please post it on the Lego videos. And my post was reposted by Explosive Media guys, and they said their whole team read it several times and they loved it. And it was also translated in Farsi. So my life won't have been in vain. This was the Gaza fundraisers. Thank you, everyone, for donating. You've been so generous. If you have a little bit more to spare, please donate to Mahmoud and Mohammed. We've already over 1,000 for Fatima. So thanks. And post the link if you can in the chat so people can see my brilliant tweet. I don't do good tweets that often, so sometimes it happens.
Well, everybody should go and follow Benji on Twitter at @B_Schoendorff, and I am going to post that in there. Make sure to also follow, if you don't already, at @YouAreOrientalist, so you can follow tweet rants from Sina. And you can also catch me doing, writing there that I probably should do in more extended and legitimate ways on Substack or in journal articles or something. Also on X at Adnan A. Hussein. But also like, share, and subscribe. Subscribe to all the channels that are participating. Like this video before we close. Share it on social media. I think it was a great show, a great program, a wonderful discussion. We did go for a long time.
2.5 hours.
But guys, we had like 700 people
it's
on
longer
the different
than Terminator
channels.
2.
At least. Yeah, I know.
The time flew, and it was a really excellent discussion and so many excellent comments. I really want to thank all of you, for the panelists, for participating today on this discussion, and all of you in the chat who have enriched the dialogue with great remarks, a lot of funny, quips and insightful remarks. It's wonderful, this community coming together here for the 14th edition of Iran versus the Epstein Empire. More to come. And so until next time, peace with solidarity, peace with justice and solidarity to you all. And Benji?
Free Palestine and swift victory to the free people of the world.
All right.
To America.
Excellent. There we go. We got them all in. All right, everyone. Take care.
And land back.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.